John Fredericks Radio Network. Follow me on Twitter at JF Radio Show, coming to you live from your nation's capital at our studios here right by the Capitol in Eastern Market at Corey Lewandowski Embassy National Milky Way headquarters. I got a bunch of new microphones here, all because we knew Mark Warner was coming out, so I get new equipment. So I'm really fired up to have him on today. And he is joining us now. Welcome, Senator, Democratic Senior Senator from Virginia, Mark Warner, and he's also the ranking member of the Senate Intel Committee that he sits on. Senator, great to have you with us, sir.
Thank you so much, John.
Okay, so let me start with a disclaimer, may I? Because I believe in complete transparency and all this stuff. We're on the radio. I am a Mark Warner voter, and I endorsed Mark Warner's candidacy for re-election in 2014 over Ed Gillespie, and I voted for him. And if the election were held today, I would do the same thing again. So having said that, now let's get started.
Now it sounds like there's going to be a big butt clause here.
I know. I'm a Mark Warner voter and supporter, and I endorse his candidacy, and I'm proud of it. And it is what it is. Now, we don't always agree on policy, yes, Senator. There's a lot of differences that we have, but I like the fact that you're the ranking member of Intel, and one of the reasons that I endorsed your re-election so emphatically is because I've always found you to be forthright, candid, upfront, and honest, and I appreciate that, and I think we need statesmen of your stature, so thank you for that. And I also appreciated your vote for Gina Haspel for CIA director, bucking your party's opposition to that. So let's get to this Trump-Putin Helsinki thing. I know you've been upset over it. You put a number of things out, and we had Tim Kaine on earlier. I got his take. But what is the thing that really upset you about that press conference the most?
John, I think there were two things. Ironically, I was having a meeting that day that had been long scheduled with actually Marco Rubio, and we were meeting with parliamentarians, members of Congress from Latvia, Estonia, from Ukraine, from Poland, Czech Republic, the Brits, the Canadians, the Swedes, all of these countries where they were dealing with Russian interference as well. And we put off the beginning of the meeting because none of us could believe that an American president was standing there in public basically kowtowing to Vladimir Putin and, denying the idea that Russia doesn't use what's called active measures in not only in American elections, but in all their countries as well. One of the things that we were talking there with the Brits and the French representative ended up not getting there. I think that they maybe had partied a little bit too much the day before with the World Cup victory. But if you add up the money that the Russians spent in our elections, in the British elections, and the French elections, it's less than the cost of one new F-35 airplane. So this is a good return on investment for Russia. They determined back in 2011, their equivalent of the chairman of their Joint Chiefs of Staff said Russia couldn't compete with the West in planes, tanks, guns, ships, but in the realm of cyber and misinformation and disinformation, Russia could compete. And frankly, they have done extraordinarily well. And so I expected an American president to go in and be strong and stand up to Putin, and I don't think that happens. Just one last comment, then sure you got rebuttal, but I thought historically, if John F. Kennedy had not pushed back on Nikita Khrushchev when Khrushchev was trying to sneak missiles into Cuba, the world would be a very different place. If Ronald Reagan hadn't been so strong in going to Berlin and saying, Gorbachev, tear down this wall, instead he'd said, okay, Mr. Gorbachev, I'll just agree that you're going to reform internally, we might not have seen the fall of the Soviet Union. So I was just stunned. I couldn't believe my ears when he said, that he basically dismissed Dan Coates, who President Trump picked as his director of national intelligence, who was a good guy. I served with him on the Intelligence Committee. Again, I went against my party and led a big effort to get him confirmed when he basically kind of dismissed the findings of our Intelligence Committee. So, I I try to keep a little tempered, but my head has been spinning the last few days.
Is this not a matter of style over substance? I mean, the president said that, look, when Rod Rothenstein went to him, the deputy attorney general, and he said, I'm going to do these 12 indictments of these GRU military officials who are spies. We're going to indict them. We have the evidence. Do you want me to wait and do the indictments after your Helsinki meeting, or do you want me to do them now? You make the decision. Well, it would seem to me that if the president really didn't want to deal with this issue, he just said, just wait till I get back, as long as you give me the option. But instead, we understand, reviewed all 12 of them, got the information, got all the background intel, said, go ahead and release it now. I want to deal with Putin with that. Does it privately. But then could this just be a style issue that the president doesn't want a public confrontation when he's trying to negotiate a platform of conversation on some of these other issues like Syria, et cetera?
Yeah, let me 2 points. One, I don't know if and I hate to say this, but I don't know if I believe that leak from the White House about that the president reviewed the indictments before. And I do think the president was notified beforehand, I know that, but whether he kind of had the agreement that it's determined before or after, I just don't know whether that's true. And it seems if he'd actually done that he might have released that information before the summit. But again, I don't, will not know, and that's part of that's another part of the problem that I have stylistically. I think this president is he's not a detail guy. He's not a guy that hits the books before he goes into a meeting. And it was one of the concerns that I had, the biggest concerns, and not just me. A lot of my Republican colleagues had the same. He kind of goes in and thinks he's going to wing it. He's going to make some immediate rapport. Vladimir Putin doesn't wing anything. Vladimir Putin's a trained KGB agent. He's been on the world stage for 18 years. He's dealt with 4 American presidents. And one of the things that frightens me to death, and I think you're seeing the American defense community and intelligence community trying to stumble now, is because I was afraid that Putin might come into the meeting, and I don't, I'm trying to get a readout on this. And did Putin bring maps of Syria or maps of Ukraine? Did he come in with a huge amount of detailed information? And frankly, my fear is that Putin would come in and flatter Mr. Trump and then start bringing out all these details, and Trump might have agreed. I don't know what he signed off on in that secret meeting, and that concerns me. It concerns me greatly.
Well, they're saying they didn't sign off on anything or make any agreements. They said they had a conversation about things for future elaboration. I think that's what the White House said in the press conference yesterday, officially, Senator Warner, if memory serves me correct.
John, I guess we don't know. Let's just give one other comparison. I actually thought the fact that Mr. Trump kind of stirred things up and decided to sit down with Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, was a good thing. Mm-hmm. He goes into that meeting. He does it again one-on-one. Now, Kim Jong-un is a rookie on the world stage, so I'm not sure he came in all that much better prepared. But then the day after that meeting, again, we have no notice what really went on. The president tweets out, hey, everybody can sleep easily. North Korea is no longer a threat. That just is not the case. I mean, the follow-up meeting with the Secretary of State was a disaster. I feel bad for Mike Pompeo. And our intelligence community continues to say that North Korea is continuing hostile actions. It hasn't started to denuclearize. So I think he left, again, Americans with a false impression of security after the meeting with North Korea. And that's North Korea. That's not as much of an existential threat as Russia is. And it just, I'm bothered beyond belief. On top of that, then we had yesterday, and then again the White House tried to change their story, but Mr. Trump said, he doesn't think the Russians continuing to interfere in 2018 elections. Again, that's just not true. I mean, the CIA, we've had intelligence briefs. I'm trying to make sure we get some of this declassified, but I had lots and lots of members read some of the classified materials on that very subject of Russian ongoing intervention. And matter of fact, Dan Coates made a speech about it last Friday.
Mm-hmm. We are with Democratic Senator Mark Warner from Virginia, senior senator. Mark Warner is also the ranking member on this Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator, two things. Number one, I was at the press conference yesterday in the White House, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders said that when the president answered the question with the word no, he meant no more questions, not no, they're not meddling now. So I think we've cleared that up, and I did get your communication on that, and certainly if the president did say no in the manner that everybody thought he did or interpreted to be, you're spot on, but they clarified that and said he meant no more questions.
But it wasn't there. Well, again, I was not there, so I can only hear, but this was not just CNN, this was also Fox News reporting and others. There was at least a couple hours there where everyone had the presumption that he was saying no to continued Russian engagement. Yeah, I know the press secretary came out later and tried to clear it up, but boy, oh boy, there was a lot of ambiguity on that. And again, it feels to me like that the president's staff comes in and tries to help him after the fact. My concern will be, and I think we'll probably see this, because I think the one thing about this president that I give is, he doesn't hide his feelings. So I will wager you that within the next couple of days, either through tweeting or in interviews, he'll probably reiterate the fact that he still doesn't think Russia did it or continues to do it. I mean, it just seems a bit strange to me that he's so obsessed on this topic, so obsessed about the Mueller investigation. And, I think Mueller's played it straight. I think our Senate Intelligence Committee investigation, where our chairman, Richard Burr, and I are working together, we're trying to, reserve judgment until we see all the facts. If the president really doesn't have anything to hide and there's nothing there, the less he would say about it, the sooner it would all get done.
There's no denying that the Russians have been meddling in our election center. They've been doing it for 100 years, right? There's nothing changes. The only thing that changes is the way they do it in the cyber now. I mean, both of us, I'm a little older than you, but we grew up in kind of the same time frame. They ran Gus Hall for president, Communist Party USA, and the KGB would come over with suitcases full of $20 bills to finance his campaign. So this isn't anything new. It's just the way they're doing it is new. But to deny that they're doing it is, it doesn't.
Can I just add one thing there? I think it's, you're right. Russians have tried to intervene and mess with not just with us, I mean, with all nations. I mean, they practice misinformation and disinformation.
Right.
They live in a country where they don't have a free press.
Right.
But what happened that was different, and I think it frankly, one of the first ones to say the Obama administration was slow to pick this up and should have responded stronger. And I think the intelligence community was slow to pick it up. Three things that they did in 2016 that was qualitatively different than before, and part of it was driven by the ability to disseminate information so much quicker, was, people hack into each other's information all the time. Spies do some of that. But they haven't usually weaponized that information. And weaponization meant leaking through cutouts like Crucifer, like WikiLeaks and others, damaging information at select times. They also really, touched, and I think they were almost surprised they found as much vulnerability over 21 of our states' electoral systems. There was huge concern they might come in and mess with the votes, or, you don't even have to mess with the votes if you want to undermine confidence. You just need to change a bunch of people's registration from one precinct to another to throw chaos. And then third, and this is where our government was asleep at the switch, and frankly, the social media companies were as well. They they use social media in ways that we'd never seen before. So the level and organization and the direction of this campaign from the very, very top it was really unprecedented.
And so what are the steps being taken now? Let's take President Trump and his style and his responses out of this for a second.
Sure.
What is the U.S. government doing now in order to prevent this from happening in, say, the midterms?
Great question. And let me take it in each category. In terms of protecting candidates and political parties from further cyber attack, we're really not doing too much. I mean, I think there are efforts to better educate, to try to have people do dual authentication, to make sure you warn people on campaigns not to open suspicious emails. But we're really not doing as much. And this is a hard one because of our appropriate First Amendment rights. But I think we can actually learn from countries like some of the Baltic nations and others who have done a better job of educating their political candidates and parties to do better defenses. That would be not one thing we should do. Second thing, on election security, in a normal administration, because everybody recognizes this problem, because state and local election officials are very concerned about too much federal intervention, there's nobody that's really in charge of election security. In a normal administration, somebody in the White House would be designated as the top election security person to try to convene, state registrars and others, and to do more security. We haven't done that. We have put $380 million in, and we, in Virginia, I'm really proud, we yanked out, before the gubernatorial elections, any of the machines that didn't have a paper trail. So even if you hacked in, there's some auditable paper trail after the fact. We need to do that everywhere. I'm concerned that 3 companies control 90% of all the voter files, the kind of back office maintenance. And my theory is that you could have intervention in those voter files. And one of the things we could do there is, frankly, these companies, we need to have some level of standards or some independent ability to go in and audit to make sure that their systems are secure. And then the final issue around social media, we need some this gets again tricky, and we're going to bring the social media companies back in, but we really need some guideposts. Let me give you at least 2 examples that I would hope most of your listeners would at least agree on, because they range from fairly light touch to much more, but 2 of the lightest touch things would be, I think every American, every Virginian ought to have a right to know when they're being contacted by any entity, whether that entity is a real person or whether it's a bot. That's not going to get rid of all the bad actors, but at least it will give you an ability to maybe make your own judgment on the content if this is an automated response versus a real human being. And secondly, we ought to be willing to put something like a geocoding in place so that if somebody says they're John Fredericks, tweeting you or sending you a message from Washington, D.C., but it's actually Boris in St. Petersburg, Russia, should there be an indicator that would come up on your screen that doesn't say, don't believe this, but if it's saying it's coming from Washington, but it's actually coming from a foreign nation, I mean, that might again put people on notice, because we need to be careful how the internet can manipulate people on both, every end of the political spectrum. The last point I'll make on this is that we're still trying to catch fake. We're trying to still catch people creating fake accounts with fake identities. The next generation is called deep fake technology, where they'll have somebody who will look like your video image with your words coming out of your mouth, but they're not your words. And that will, the amount that would dismay your audience or others if they see a real-time image of somebody that looks like John Fredericks, but it's total fake. I mean, that could mess not only with elections, but it would mess with our markets. It could mess if somebody looked like they were the chairman of the Fed saying XYZ, and that's a fake persona. Boy, this is we're at the beginning of the realm of manipulation. I know it sounds like James Bond spy movies, but this is what's coming, and we just we got to figure this out together.
There's one thing to have a fake Facebook meme or a fake Twitter handle. It's another thing to click a video on and you see yourself speaking and it's you talking, but it's not you saying something else. That is a very dangerous thing, and you say you disrupt markets and everything else. Almost out of time. Got to ask you this question, though. Get to politics. Your chairman of the Democratic National Party, Tom Perez, said that new primary winner, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, New York, Bronx, who's claimed she's a socialist. Tom Perez says she's the future of the Democratic Party. I just got to ask you this, Senator. Where on earth does that leave Mark Warner?
Well, it leaves me in a place, I don't know if I agree with Mr. Perez. I will tell you this, that I feel that, candidly, both of our political parties are pretty firmly ensconced in the 20th century. And the thing that we need the most, I mean, we're going to come into an era where technology, artificial intelligence are going to change all our lives, whether we want to or not. And it's going to disrupt a lot of our lives. And I think both of our political parties are too backwards looking. And whatever coalition of individuals that can say to Americans, hey, we're not going to give you everything, but we're going to try to make sure everybody gets an opportunity to earn a good life. And we're going to figure out a way to sort through this change in a way that gives folks that fair shot. They're going to be successful. But right now, some of the solution sets that are being offered, again, by both political parties, seem to be fairly backwards looking.
It would be tough for you right now to go to Iowa and say, hi, I'm Mark Warner. I ran a state. By the way, I'm the capitalist. I came from nothing. I was sleeping in my car. I found a way to make a lot of money, and that's the American way. Vote for me. I mean, they throw you out of the place. You made money? You're a capitalist? You can't run for president. Senator, thanks for being with us.
Just last point. I think that that's part of the American dream is that chance to, do well, fail. I failed twice. And, pick yourself back up and get back in the game. And I think Americans respect that. But I think what I think is what concerns folks is they feel like there's not just economic inequality, but economic insecurity. And, the fact is most folks aren't going to work for the same job for 35 years the way my dad did. And we got to figure out a new combination of a social contract that meets the economy where it's at today. And those are the kind of issues that would be a lot more productive to be debating about than some of the things we spend our time in the Congress fighting about.
Well, I happen to think that you're actually the future of the Democratic Party, not Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, because, the fact is you did fail 2 times, and once you had to live out of your vehicle. Anybody that has been there in their life and has had to pick themselves up and figure it out, they have a little bit of a different perspective on the world, sir. Don't you agree?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, John.
All right.
Thank you so much.
We're out of time. Senator Mark Warner, thanks for being with us. John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth. Stay with us.